Hi, I'm Tom Trevatt, and this is Photography Adjacent, a podcast about photography and everything else. Each week on our show, we speak to artists, activists, writers, and the occasional photographer to learn about life through their lens. This week, we're speaking to Dwayne Brown from Ottawa in Canada. Dwayne has been in photography for 40 years, and he runs Headshots Matter, which is a collective of headshot photographers from all over the world. Full disclosure, I'm part of Headshots Matter as well. It was a really good conversation where Dwayne talks about, among other things, the importance of curiosity and humility when being a headshot photographer, working with people, and the interest that he has that has sustained him over 40 years of photography. So check it out below. Dwayne Brown, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Tom. How about yourself?
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. Dwayne, we've known each other for maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. I think that's about how long.
I think so,
We've
yeah.
gotten to know each other online, and then we had the fun opportunity of having a visit in person this fall, and that was really fun.
Absolutely. If you were going to tell me one thing about yourself that I should know to help me understand what motivates you as a photographer and what you do, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think that something that has been consistent in my career from the beginning to the middle to now is I'm really curious about people. And I like to kind of incorporate that curiosity into my photography and how I can have that photography help the people that I get to meet, learn about, and to, therefore, I guess, sort of help them move their ideas forward with imagery.
Mm-hmm.
So curiosity, for sure. I would say that's the one thing that I would say that I am.
Fantastic. So I know a little bit about you, but let's do an introduction for our listeners, for people who are watching at home. Tell me, Dwayne.
Easily
for
done.
The multiple things that you do. Tell me.
So I've been a commercial corporate photographer for a really long time, and it's basically all I've ever done in my adult life career. I started my business in the early 80s back in Edmonton, which is the western part of Canada, and I was 20, and I started shooting mostly, I guess we'd call it advertising work, commercial advertising work, where we had to hire models and actors and create sets and work with creative concepts, and then and primarily it was all shot in studio. I did that for about 8 years or so, and then I moved to Calgary, where I had a studio there for 9 years, and that leaned a little more towards corporate work, which actually kind of resonated better with me. Less hiring models and actors and shooting more real people. So shooting everybody from, executives for oil and gas companies to people in the field in an industrial environment. And I really like that. And then in about 2000, I moved to Ottawa, Canada's capital, and that's where I guess I did a bit of a blend of all of those things. But still leaning towards photographing people, and so I've been doing that here for, I guess it's about 23 years, and slowly, really just focusing on photographing portraits. So that would be corporate folks, students. We do a lot of work for universities and colleges. And then lots of headshots. About 8 years ago or so, I started to sort of see or sense that it wasn't just executives being photographed for headshots. It was more, I don't know, just everybody needed one. LinkedIn was coming on stream really, really hard, and that was fun for me because what we were able to do is to take that same attention to detail for doing executives and apply that to doing corporate headshots for just about everybody that needed one for their LinkedIn. And then that sort of spawned an idea that I guess it's about 6 years ago or so that I wanted to create an online platform that wouldn't just help me be better connected with my clients who are looking for a headshot photographer. I could broaden that to a handful of photographers that were buddies of mine, here in Canada. And then I took it a little further and broadened it to some photographers that I got to know that were in other countries. And that sort of spawned the predecessor project to Headshots Matter, which, you and I know each other through. And at the time, we just called it LinkedIn Portraits, and it was really just focused on helping clients find the best headshot photographer to photograph them for their LinkedIn portrait.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years ago, we decided to broaden that project, so it wasn't just focused on LinkedIn portraits, but headshots in general. So now we have a project called Headshots Matter that is we're in various countries around the world with about a little over 100 photographers, and that project it helps photographers be better connected with people who are looking for a headshot photographer in their city. So that headshot could be used for LinkedIn or for a corporate website or for an acting portfolio, and that's been a really, really fun project and a great evolution of my commercial corporate business, which I still do, but I run alongside that the project that we call Headshots Matter.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to put a pin in the Headshots Matter project for the time being, and I'm going to come back to it in a second. I really want to drill down a little bit into the early history.
Yeah.
Because we've obviously spoken a little bit about what you did right at the very, very beginning, and studios that you had, the commercial work that you were doing.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first picked up a camera?
Well, again, that's a good question. I guess I would have been 16 or 17. I was when I was a teenager, I was always very interested in entrepreneurial things. I liked making a dollar my own way, and I was always, I guess, a little on the creative side, although I wasn't a photographer. All of my classes that I was working on in the latter bit of high school were drawing and painting and commercial art and graphic arts, and then in my last year of high school, I took a class, a program called graphic arts, and part of that was to learn how to use a camera and how to make prints in a darkroom. I'd never done that before, and this is going to sound maybe a little foolish, but we'll just say it anyway. It was way easier than drawing and way easier than painting, and it was really fun. Yeah. And I excelled at it in high school, although if I look back at those photographs now, they were probably not very good, but it was sure fun. And then from that, I decided to take a year off between high school and post-secondary, and I worked in a camera shop, and I learned everything I could about taking photographs. Mm-hmm. And then I went to photo school for what was supposed to be a 2-year program, but by the half of the year of the second year, I was just bored, and it was too technical and not creative enough. So I quit school and I became a photo assistant for a photographer in Edmonton who was kind of the guy that did all the important projects, more advertising, leaning a little bit towards fashion, I guess. He photographed people as well, and that's where I really learned, and I learned more about the darkroom work because he needed me to do that. Mm-hmm. And then he said he was leaving town. He was going to move from Edmonton to London, England. And as a young 20-year-old, I was faced with two choices. One, he was going to leave and I was going to be out of a job, or I would go to the bank, borrow a bunch of money, and start my own business. And it's the maybe the arrogance or innocence of youth that I had no idea how hard it was. All I knew is that I knew how he had done it, and I thought I could emulate what he did. So when I was 20 years old, I got a studio that was 3,000 square feet, 20-foot ceilings, and a big garage door where we could, bring cars in, and we had parties and bands, and it was a pretty fun time. And with him leaving, and I had already met his clients, art directors and designers that he did work for, they seemed pretty keen to just give me the business that they'd given him. And so that's where I really, I guess, went to school, but the school of doing the real deal. And and it was really fun. So that was the early 80s for me. And doing advertising projects, is every project that was presented to me, I had never done it before, and my sort of kind of default would be, yeah, I can do that. And then you take the sketch, the comp that the art director presented, and you just figure out, how the heck can you do this? And were there mistakes made? Sure, but it seemed to kind of work out, and so that was kind of my 8 years of learning and establishing myself as a commercial photographer.
Yeah. I mean, the standout point of this story is that the bank was happy to lend you a 20-something-year-old kid a lot of money.
Yeah, it was in the day. It was in the day, Tom, when you sat across from a banker, and he would listen to you and really look you in the eye and shake your hand and read your reference letters and either believe in you or not. It wasn't so much about the math as it is today. And he believed in me, and he lent me a big pile of money for that time, for my age, with very little collateral, and it was really more of just a belief in potential, I guess, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity, for sure.
Have you? I mean, this means that your career which spans, I think, approximately 40 years.
Yeah, that's right.
It's only been photography. There's been nothing else there at all.
Yeah, only photography. As I'd always try to kind of share with my kids as they were growing up, I would because I wanted them to kind of see that you don't just have to have a job to make money. I would say, everything around us, our home, our things, our holidays, was every single penny was created by a photograph, by a creative pursuit, and I think that was a good lesson for them. And so it's always been photography, and that's, I guess it's been, I feel really grateful that I've been able to kind of cobble together a career and a living by taking people's photographs. I never imagined it, I guess, when I was a teenager, that's what I would do. I was probably going to pursue something a little more academic, and then went down an entrepreneurial creative path, which has been super fun.
Excellent. Yeah. I really love this part of the story where, you're telling me this is, you were super excited at the very beginning to start the business. There was almost no break in terms of, oh, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to get a bar job. I'm going to try, I'm going to hedge my bets. You just went all in on this.
Yeah.
And you were so super enthusiastic about it from the very beginning. And I've spent time with you. We went for a drive into the hills behind Ottawa.
Yeah.
You were with your camera. I see you posting stuff regularly on Instagram.
Yeah.
There is almost no let up to that enthusiasm for photography.
Yeah. Well, so I guess what I would say to that is that photography is a really wonderful way for a photographer to participate in life, to observe life, to record life, to share my perspective, and to be a creative entrepreneur isn't really there isn't really I guess a linear line, or at least a linear line that's going to curve down. If anything, that linear line just kind of increases. And so after 40 years of being a commercial photographer, I find it really fun to still be challenged technically, challenged from an entrepreneurial point of view. Like example, we all faced the pandemic not that long ago, and for me as an entrepreneur, all I saw is just, okay, well, that's another curveball, that's another speed bump that we've got to figure out, and I was able to, and so yeah, it's is it funner now than when it was in the 80s? Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess in life you have experiences that you've pulled from. You can handle problems more easily, and it's just really fun to continually create and share and problem solve and keep the ball rolling. Yeah.
And in a way, it's you have that kind of buffer of those years of experience, but also maybe a little bit of a financial buffer. It means that the problems that you're solving are more playful. There's a kind of more playful attitude towards the problems, I guess.
Maybe. I'm going to say something, Tom, I think about sometimes, and I try to share with other people who are entrepreneurs, is we will say that we don't really like the roller coaster of, business is great, business isn't so great, business is great, business isn't so great. And I would challenge it that it's more like this. So when business is great, wonderful, that's great. You make a little more money, put it in the bank. When business is down, that's actually the time when it's more fun, because there's a sense of humility that gets heightened, because even if you're at the top of your game in the city or town you're in, when business is kind of goes down a bit, you think, okay, well, what do I do? It's the kick in the pants that gets you thinking a little more creatively, or work a little harder, or get up earlier in the morning to send out social media, or as I say, shake the trees. And so having the length of business doesn't necessarily, it isn't really about financial base. It's more about, I guess, embracing the humility, and also knowing that with every downswing, there's going to be an upswing, but you have to work hard at it. And there's no magic bullet. There's no formula to that. It's typically work hard, work smart, be nice to people, take care of your clients, and it tends to work out. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, knowing you for a little bit, Dwayne, humility is absolutely a key word for you, I can tell. It's how I can see you run your business. It's how I see you run Headshots Matter. It's absolutely central to the way that you deal with people in the world, deal with the world in general, I guess.
Yeah.
A really interesting story, or a sort of memory from this last summer when we were in a cafe. For anybody who knows Dwayne, who's listening, he's never stopping. There's never a kind of pause in Dwayne as a photographer. So we were out for a coffee, you, me, and Barry, and you spotted a guy on the street, and you're like, I have to get this guy's portrait. I have to speak to this guy.
Right.
And it was just, for me, that would be a very difficult conversation, But for you, it just seems that it's absolutely something natural that you come up to this guy, you get an introduction from your mutual friend, and then you get a wonderful portrait of this guy. Yeah. I think he was wearing an interesting shirt and a hat.
He was wearing a very interesting shirt, and he was a character. And I guess deep down, I'm a shy person like other folks are, but I measure what's the pain of going and saying hello and asking him, or the pain in thinking I should have introduce myself and asked him, and so I push forward and I ask, and people will almost always say yes, and if they say no, they say no, and I forgot about that. That was fun.
And I think that was part of your 60 at 60 portrait project.
That particular one wasn't, but
Okay.
I have, so 60 at 60. So maybe I'll explain that, Tom.
Yeah,
So I turned a year ago, almost to the day, I turned 60, and my wife Jennifer and I were talking about, wouldn't it be fun to create a fun legacy project? Actually, we're always in a stage of creating legacy stuff, but so we created, and Jennifer has been helpful to me with this. And it's a project called 60 at 60. The premise of it is within the year, or approximately a year, I'm going to do 60 portraits, black and white, all of people who I either are very dear to me, family, friends, people who I find are doing really interesting things in my city or further than my city, or just people that are really visually interesting. And so, yeah, I'm at close to 40 now, and I've got to kind of get to it. And
got to get on it.
And Tom, as you know, maybe the viewers need to know, I photographed Tom when he was in Canada. We took the Jeep out and explored the Gatineau Hills, and with the doors off the Jeep, and we did a little photo of Tom, who is dear to me and I find also very interesting, and who is doing cool stuff.
Thanks, man. That's excellent. So let's get on to Headshots Matter. So this is actually how we know each other, really, isn't it? So to give a little bit of background here, Dwayne, you reached out to me. It must have been approaching 2 years, if not 2 years. I think it was on LinkedIn you might have first approached me and told me about Headshots Matter. So obviously, I wanted to know more about this thing, what's going on, and you've got an Instagram account, you've got a website, and really it's a platform for helping photographers. And like you said, it started out from perspective of being a kind of LinkedIn portraiture project, but now it's much more broader than that. And one of the things that I love about Headshots Matter is that, and this appeals to me very much, is that the headshot really isn't seen as the headshot, the idea of the headshot is much broader than maybe people might think. So you have photographers whose work that you repost who, it might be closer to a fashion image, it might be closer to a beauty portrait, it might be closer to a kind of intimate portrait of someone's face, not necessarily a kind of a commercial portrait. Can you tell me a little bit more about, the evolution of this project and kind of what you really hold dear about it?
It's a really special project, and when I started it, it was at its core, we were building one-page gallery pages that show about a dozen images of a photographer's work. The front end, back end, everything about that page is built with really rich SEO content, and I've been able to figure out a way to get Google really liking those pages, and so at the core, it was about sort of pushing that as the benefit for a photographer to join and to participate. It still is. It's still very important to me. But what has kind of evolved or unveiled itself, and I didn't really see this coming, but it is just so lovely that what has happened with the more you grow a community, the richer the community gets. And so it's very important that I share that we're not really looking for a very narrow kind of style of photography. It's every photographer has a creative voice, a perspective, their own view. Also, the type of headshot that one might shoot, like yourself, you shoot actors. and people who are more creative, they need an image or headshot that's more creative. People are looking for just a LinkedIn corporate. It might be a little bit sort of kind of not more conservative, but it has a certain application.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like to do with this project is to give each photographer that creative space to be them, and and by doing that, they feel championed, and they should be. But then also the other photographers who are or a part of the community, they get to see that, they get to be inspired, they get to learn from those photographers that are kind of going down a different path. There's even this young woman. Her name is Laura, and she's in Madrid, and she's just a young girl. Like, she might be 22, and I brought her on when she was still in photo school, and her stuff was, really edgy and street, and just she was photographing her friends and musicians, and does that have an application for a LinkedIn portrait? Or, well, maybe, but it wasn't really about that. I wanted to kind of put her up the flagpole a little bit so that her edgy style might be inspiring to other photographers. And then your work, Tom, you have a very definite creative style that I think is inspiring to others. Sean in Stockholm, his imagery, it's not commercial, it's not corporate, but it's really, really lovely, and so his work, it inspires others too. So I'm going and I'm getting excited about this, but one of the really beautiful things about this project that has happened is the community who only a handful of the photographers I've met in person, they've become really good friends and supportive. And we have a WhatsApp group which you participate in, and I'm more of a viewer of that. I jump in and kind of maybe talk about some more bigger picture mindset type stuff, but I get to see the camaraderie, the really wonderful spirit and support that's happening in that environment. Example, Sean, who is a very experienced photographer in Stockholm, and he's been in the UK as well. And he's put his creative wing over a photographer we have in Montreal named Mike. And Mike's only been shooting a short time, but his work has really sort of improved and with that guidance, with that support, with someone who is experiencing, that's a great shot. So that's it. It started off as really just helping people, I guess, almost technically or from marketing perspective, and now it's more. It's hard to put your finger on it, and it's just really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, over the last maybe 2 days, there's been some really fantastic conversations happening in the WhatsApp group. Essentially, for people who don't know, there's maybe 20, maybe 30 photographers in this WhatsApp group.
30.
Who are all part of Headshots Matter. And people just pose questions. Oh, I've got this particular issue with a client, or I've got this particular issue with editing, or I've got this particular, can you help me with this? And then everyone chips in, like Mike the other day posted something that was like, oh, I'm getting these kinds of color issues with my photography. Can you have a look? And he'd send a raw file around to everyone, and we'd all have a kind of little go at editing it and sending it back. And so this is a conversation that maybe is like, we're workshopping people's problems. And this is an incredible way to fast track people's learning. It's an incredible way to actually participate in a community. But I think for me, the value there really is that not only are you getting such great help from other people, but you're also understanding yourself. Like, you're understanding your own perspective on these particular questions. So when someone poses a question that, okay, maybe I haven't really articulated this before, I've never put it into words, but okay, now I'm thinking about the answer to that question, and now I know what to say when this particular instance happens with that client. Or, it's always when things go wrong that people want help. So if you've not actually, it's almost like role playing the problems before they happen, or helping you understand how you might be able to respond to similar kind of problems. I think it's incredibly valuable. It's an incredibly valuable resource. But I also want to talk a little bit about how Headshots Matter is a valuable resource for people who aren't part of
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
the team, as it were.
So again, we have a really cool resource resource and network, a community of photographers, and I think the quick way that other photographers who are not a member can be inspired or learn is just by following the Instagram account, and lots do, and we, we, no, we don't need everybody to be a member, and it's wonderful that our membership grows. But it's if we can have an influence in the overall community of headshot photography, I think that's wonderful, and not necessarily just from a style or an approach or lighting or composition, but even how you treat people, how you are, how kindness and gratitude and how those sort of things, when you're photographing somebody, how that really helps. So the Instagram account definitely is helpful. We also have been developing um, sessions, and we're still in the infant stage of that, but mentorship sessions with a small handful of photographers who are headshots matter photographers. And also, we have a good friend and colleague, Barry Keegan, who's a marketing expert, and he's been helping. He has a mentoring session that helps photographers with their marketing and a little bit of SEO. That's been very helpful. So the mentorship sessions, the Instagram account, and then if you don't necessarily want to be a member, but you just are kind of you're an emerging photographer, you just have a few ideas. We have a WhatsApp account that's just tailored for that, where no one has to be. You don't have to be a member. You can join it. You can access off our website, and then you're there, Tom. I'm there, Tom, and Barry is as well, and so people can sort of just flesh out some ideas about their photography.
Absolutely. For those of you who are watching or listening, and you might hear Barry's name a few times, Barry's the producer of the podcast. So in subsequent episodes, if Barry pops up, he's listening in the background right now.
Yeah.
Hi, Barry, producer.
Yeah.
He's there. He's also, as Dwayne says, an expert marketer. So
yeah, that he is.
I'm sure he's very helpful for lots of photographers there. But I also want to talk a little bit about the way that Headshots Matter as a network helps people who aren't even photographers. So let's talk a little bit about a project that we worked on together this summer with Snapchat. Tell me about how that happened.
Yeah, that's a neat project that we obviously it's a neat project, but how it came about was quite interesting. So I received an email query through one of our forums from a woman named Alex. She was in the UK, and she just said that that she was working on a bigger project, that she needed to find photographers in various European cities, Berlin, Vienna, London, Oxford, Amsterdam, Paris, Berlin. I mentioned that already. And she said, do you have photographers in those cities as well? Yeah, we have everybody except for Vienna, but I'll find somebody. And so from that initial email query, we organized photographers in all of those cities. Tom and a colleague of his, and also Headshots Matter photographer James, photographed London and Oxford. I remember that correctly. We had a photographer in Berlin, Justin in Amsterdam, Quentin in Paris, and Sean, who is a photographer in Stockholm. When I had put out a little bit of a query on social if we're looking for a photographer in Vienna, he says, I'll do that. I'll jump on a plane. And so, yeah, he very quickly coordinated that, and he went there. And then with my conversation with Alex, I asked her if there's other needs in North America, and she connected me to their head office in California, and we then got organized a photographer in a Maud who's in Brooklyn. He shot New York, and then a fellow named Juan who's in just south of Palo Alto. He shot Palo Alto, and I went to Toronto and I shot Toronto. And so collectively, all of us had to shoot very consistently to a particular brand standard, a very specific color, yellow, of course, and then they were almost all shot on the same day. If they weren't all the same day, then there was like a week apart, and it was really fun. It was fun to do that, and fun to and myself as sort of the I guess the founder and guiding force of this. I didn't want to be too pushy on we need everybody to shoot a certain way. I wanted them to shoot their own way with still the respect to the brand standard. And I think the results were pretty terrific. The client was very happy. We all had a lot of fun. There was money to be made, of course, but most importantly, it was a project that we collectively kind of all swung together and put our heads and hearts together on and did it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the great thing about this is that essentially what Headshots Matter operated as is a kind of hub for all of these. Snapchat is somewhat a unique brand in a sense, but there are other global brands like Snapchat, other global companies like Snapchat. So if they are looking for, a universal style across all of their global, London, New York, Palo Alto offices or whatever it is, Headshots Matter's got you, right? That's a great thing about it.
For sure. And because we have been establishing and elevating the brand authority of Headshots Matter, if we don't have a photographer in a city, I'll find one, and we'll bring. And they don't have to become a member to participate. It's just really about sort of working together to solve some problems.
Really. Yeah, we were speaking. I think it must have been about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, about how you must know the markets in each of these cities very, very well. Like having a kind of insight in each of these places.
Yeah, it's. I try to, and you get a sense of what sort of budget appetites are, and what are the industries that are driving certain markets. You get a sense of it, and if what you don't know, it's easy enough to figure that out and to research. And Barry's also been very helpful with that. He's got his fingers on the pulse of that topic. But that brings me to a thought, Tom. So we have photographers in all of these cities around the world, and you would think that there would be a lot of differences with these photographers, but there's some very simple core commonalities that make me happy and proud to run this project, and that's kindness, empathy, humility, and passion to do the best job, not for the photographer, but for the person that each photographer is shooting. So that's quite neat. So each market has sort of trends and influences, but good photographers prevail, and that's really important to me. If I can be helpful for clients to find that best photographer, not just from a technique or experience point of view, but from good folks. I think good folks attract good folks, and that includes good clients. And like Snapchat is, I didn't know a lot about them from a corporate perspective, but they're massive. And you know what, as you know, is they collectively were just really good, kind, grateful people.
Great fun,
and so it was a great project for us to participate in, just from a like-mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what makes a good headshot?
What makes a good headshot?
Lots of different styles of photography. You see all of them very, very regularly. What makes a good headshot?
There's a whole bunch of different things, but I think there's a couple things that are more important than others. And it's something that even so myself as a portrait photographer, corporate portrait photographer, my creative partner Anita and I always will say, what's the story? So even a head and shoulders photo that is used in a corporate context still tells a story. So story, what's the lighting? What's the background? Black and white, color, jacket, no jacket, tie, no tie. What color a tie? What type of shirt? If it's a woman, how is she appointed that with jewelry? If it's an actor, there's even a funner sort of kind of creative latitude that happens. Emotion, composition, a reverence to the approach. Again, still comes down to what's the story. Mm-hmm. And if this is very important. So if it's all about the story, it's not the photographer's story. It's the person you're photographing story. So that's why I love that Headshots Matter has such a range of styles, and because all of those photographers, they're shooting their own creative approach, but really what's paramount to them is that they're helping that person they're photographing tell their best professional brand story, whether they're an actor, a CEO, someone who's just starting out, or a creative person, an engineer, government official. It's all about story. So what makes a good headshot? It should tell a little story, and that it's about the person and not the photographer. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely, I definitely agree with you on that. I think one of the things that I really care about really is the sense that everybody that you work with is unique, right? And there's no one size fits all for those people. So why would you photograph them exactly the same way each time if you care about those stories that those people have got to tell? And I think that in this world, we're all competing for attention. All of those people, all those clients that we're working for are competing for attention. So the best way that we can serve them is precisely like you say, to be able to communicate their story successfully, interestingly, in a way that's going to capture people's attention. And that for me is not about having a standard approach. It's about having actually a kind of, a bespoke or a collaborative approach to the photography. And that I think is something that's unique that comes out with Headshots Matter. It's very clear that people have got those kinds of different ways of thinking about photography, different ways of approaching their clients. Which I really, really love. I love watching the stories popping up. I love watching those photographs popping up. We're going to wrap up very soon, Barry. But I'm going to. You're not Barry. You're Dwayne.
So I'm going to jump in, Tom. So something that you made me think of. I was looking at your website, and one of the things that you mentioned I believe it's in the About section, that you help the people you photograph lean into authenticity. And so in this time, yes, attention is important. Some people say it's the new currency. But if you get someone's attention and you're not being your authentic self, then what's the point of that? So again, goes back to the story, goes back to having a photographer's creative humility, creative passion mixed with their creative humility to help that person be their best authentic self. I think that's what helps to make a good headshot. And so, thank you for saying those words on your site, because I actually really I believe strongly in that, and my own personal style will be always reflective of that, um, and I think collectively our network, for the most part, really sort of highlights that too. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, you've been working on Headshots Matter for 4 years, 5 years?
I think it 5 or 6, and
Okay. Yeah.
and it's it started off kind of slow, and now it's this organism that is almost kind of having a life of its own.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm always participating in it every day, several times a day, whether it's social correspondence, talking to photographers on Zoom or WhatsApp or email or text, and it's a pretty fun going concern. But
Yeah.
now it's kind of interesting is that the photographers are, like any good community, are helping each other on their own, and so I get to sort of kind of view some of that at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you run your own studio as well,
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne Brown Studio. You've just started an experiment into headshot, so Ottawa-based headshots. So it's
Yeah.
called Ottawa Headshots.
Yeah.
What's the future of Dwayne Brown, the photographer, outside of Headshots Matter,
Mm.
outside of maybe Ottawa Headshots? Is there,
Mm.
because I've been seeing a little bit more, landscape stuff,
Mm.
or kind of stuff that's
Well,
not corporate.
mhm.
What are you
Okay.
up to?
So in regards to the other imagery that I shoot, it isn't necessarily because that's what I want to do instead of what I do.
No.
It's really about, my wife has this expression. It's always about sharpening the saw. And so every good photographer, every good musician, painter, writer, they do their craft every day,
Mm-hmm.
all the time. It's what they think. They wake up doing, thinking, feeling. So the other imagery that I shoot and share is really just about that. I don't turn the eye off. Right. It's always
Mm-hmm.
about observing. But to go to your question, what's in my future is a continuation of what I'm already doing. I love photographing people, and I want to do more of that. I'm already pretty busy doing it, but I the more I do what I do, I wish I had just more time in the day, and because it's every photograph is a conversation with somebody new. I get to learn from them and get to satisfy some curiosity. To touch on why we built a separate website called Ottawa Headshots, it was really a kind of for 2 or 3 reasons. One, as an experiment to see if we could, from an SEO perspective, present a website and social media, um, uh, um, social media to grab the attention of folks that may not know who Dwayne Brown is. And so in a short amount of time, we've got that on page one, and maybe result 10 or less, which is good. And so my hopes are that will just help us gain a little just a little more business, I guess, for people that don't know who I already am. But also what I've been learning is that it's been an interesting experiment to be able to share with some of the photographers on Headshots Matter. A city-based domain is a great kind of cornerstone to SEO. So someone searching for LinkedIn headshots, corporate headshots in Ottawa, having a domain that's called Ottawa Headshots is going to be helpful. So, likewise, that could be like Maud in Brooklyn. He has Brooklyn headshots, and maybe a variation on that. Anyway, so we're working to help some photographers that might consider incorporating that into their marketing. Mike in Montreal, who hasn't been doing things for very long, he doesn't have a lot of name recognition. He took my advice and he bought a domain, montrealheadshot.com, and he's going to be launching that website in the new year. And so that's, by doing something for myself, I can learn about sort of some of the challenges and the benefits that I can share with other photographers. So that's kind of what that project is about. It's in no way meant to replace what I'm already doing. I love shooting corporate. I love shooting colleges and universities and headshots for all of those people. It's just I want to be busier. I like it.
Like being busy, of course. Of course we do. We love being busy. Dwayne, before we wrap up, is there one photograph that stands out to you as being an important photograph in your career or life?
That's a great question.
Doesn't have to be yours. It could be someone else's photograph.
Yeah. There's so many images, and there's so many influences, and there's so many things that are kind of in that category. I'll tell you one little story. So, my daughter, her name is Claire. You've met Claire. Claire's sunshine. She's one of my best friends, and not just because she's my daughter, but because she's a really exceptional person. And Claire's 33 now, and well on her career successfully. But when she was still in high school, and she was 17 at the time, 17, 18, it was approaching my birthday, which is December. And I said to Claire, on my birthday, I want to just photograph a really important photo. I want to just photograph somebody. I don't know who that'll be. And we were just kind of talking about ideas. And she said, well, Dad, like, why don't you just photograph me? And typically she didn't like being photographed, being a teenager. So at the time, I didn't have a studio. I was doing everything on location, but I rented a space in the complex where her high school was, and I set up a background, and we used a portrait of Keira Knightley. I'm not sure who the photographer was at the time, and it was this beautiful black and white background, bare shoulders, and so we used that as our inspiration, and that would have to be the portrait that we had got that day. I would have to say is one of my favorite portraits, and because it kind of earmarked or highlighted a certain time in her life, and it's about our relationship too. So that would be one of them. But there's just so many. I've shot thousands of people over the years, and there's different stories that come to mind. But that would be a good one.
Amazing. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to just add to this? Where can we find you online? That's a good.
Well, before we do that, one thing I will say that photographers will be listening to this. If there's one thing that they can be doing to help their photography and to help their business and to help their life, maybe we'll say, is to reserve and afford themselves time to be curious, and to not always feel that you need to figure it out. It's about experimentation, and it's about doing, and but first and foremost, being curious and giving yourself time to imagine. I think that's truly important. So whether you're at the very beginning of your career, mid-career, well on to your career, it never leaves you. And so even though I've been doing this for a really long time, I feel like I'm just getting started, and it's because I believe that I'm fortunate enough to embrace the concept of being curious. To find me, my commercial corporate studio is DwayneBrownStudio.com, and Headshots Matter, of course, is headshotsmatter.com, and you can find it in social with all the same, it's just Headshots Matter, and because Fantastic. They do, and just, yeah, I really appreciate this, Tom, and
Thanks.
I'm really excited for your continued success and for your your development from a curiosity perspective too, and I just think your work is wonderful, and I'm really proud to have you part of Headshots Matter.
That's very sweet, Dwayne. Thank you very much.
All right, well, you have a great rest of your day, Tom. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thanks, Dwayne. Speak soon.
Cheers.